Hey, welcome to the Northeast Hunt and Film podcast. I'm your host, Jason Alex. Here you'll find hunting stories and strategies based mainly out of the Northeast, but will also include hunts from all around the country. If you can hunt it and you can film it, chances are we're going to talk about it on here. Enjoy. Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Northeast Hunt and Film. On today's episode, I'm joined with Mike Lafleur from the United Blood Trackers. He's got a wired-haired dachshund, and he's the guy you call when you've made a questionable shot on your deer and can't find it. We talk about what to do after the shot, shot placement, and his mission to open up Massachusetts' eyes to allow for blood tracking. They don't allow it. It's one of the 3 states on the eastern seaboard. The other 2 are Connecticut and Rhode Island that do not allow the pursuit of a deer with a dog, even though the dog is on leash and can't actively pursue the deer more than 30 feet away from Mike. The law is written in such a way that doesn't allow it. So he'll get calls from people from Mass and that didn't know, and he's just like, I can't do anything. The best I can do is give you advice over the phone. So it's kind of a shame. It should be something that's not even a question. You should be allowed to be assisted to find your deer. But we recorded down at HUNTSTOCK, and he was down there with he's got a little wired-haired dachshund, and the dog's only 4 months old, and he's been training with it and whatnot. And Mass Fish and Wildlife was there, and they had a live deer butchering thing where like they field dressed it and they quartered it, blah blah blah, deboned the meat, kind of start to finish on how to process a deer. Well, they filled the water bottle with blood, poked a hole in the cap, and they made a scent course for young Freddy, and I think they put a deer leg or something at the end of it. I didn't get to see it. I wish I would have, but I was doing other things. But it kind of like blew their mind when Freddy found it just off little pin drops of blood that you couldn't even see. And they're like, wow, at 4 months old, he can do this, like what's the capability at an older age? But it's going to be hard to change Massachusetts' mind. That law would have to go through legislation and this, that, and the other. And from what I understand, it's very difficult to do. It was cool to talk to him. He's definitely very passionate about it, and you can tell he cares and he likes to do what he's doing. So I'll leave a link in the description, but you can find him. He's out of Ware, New Hampshire, and you can find him on UnitedBloodTrackers.com. His number's there, and yeah, I think they operate on like donation. So, while you call and you're waiting for Mike to meet you, just run to the ATM and take out some money and donate. But hopefully I don't have to call him this year, but it's good knowing that I have that option. Not down in Mass, of course, but maybe that will change with time. But yeah, HUNTSTOCK was a good time. It was good to meet a lot of people. Thanks to everybody that stopped by the booth. A lot of people liked the podcast, and I sold some merch and all that good stuff. And yeah, got to talk deer hunting the whole weekend. I felt a little under the weather. I've been off and on sick for the past few weeks, and that particular Saturday morning, I was feeling pretty rough. I actually took some Dayquil, which is not part of my plan ever. I don't take pills for anything. I have to be very, very hard off if I'm taking any sort of medicine. But I had an old school grandmother, so that's where that comes from. But yeah, it was a good time. Good to meet everybody, and a lot of really good deer hunters there. And both Pat Burns and Pat Guyette, killed it for a first year event. It was a really good turnout, and looking forward to the future ones. And deer season's upon us, kinda. We're getting there. Less than 3 weeks. Bear season starts soon. I'm gonna go out, do some bear hunting. I guess it's weather dependent, because if it's real hot, 85 degrees, I'm probably not gonna be out there. But if we get a couple cooler nights or something, I'll poke out and mainly just shake down the system. It's good to practice in the yard, but there's nothing like the actual thing, so it's good to get out there and get up in the saddle and just kind of get the first hunts under your belt, just being in a tree in season with a tag in your pocket, just enjoying it. So if you want to see the video version of this podcast, it'll be on YouTube. I recorded all of the podcasts I did with a camera. So there'll be a couple more from Huntstock coming, and then one we did on turkeys, so that won't be till April or whatever. But yeah, got a couple good ones recorded, and looking forward to the season. Good luck to all the bear hunters, and let's get in this podcast with Mike Lafleur. All right, we're live. Another one from Huntstock. Sitting here with Mike Lafleur from United Blood Trackers. And we're going to talk one of the most underrated and underappreciated jobs out there is find your deer after he's hit and potentially wounded. Exactly. So welcome, Mike.
Hey,
thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Mike Lafleur. I'm a licensed leashed dog tracker from the state of New Hampshire. I'm also a member of United Blood Trackers as a national organization. Basically, I'm here at Huntstock to promote leashed dog tracking. State of Massachusetts, it's illegal to track deer with a dog, which in my mind is completely asinine.
Yeah,
there's only a few states on the eastern seaboard, that's Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, it's illegal. All other states accepted the use of a dog to help recover, a wounded animal.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's almost, in a way, I mean, you could argue as to the T, well, you shouldn't have shot the deer in the first place, but it's almost inhumane to not be able to go, recover it.
It is. You're touching the basis of wanton waste,
yep.
Whereas you're not utilizing every resource you can to recover that animal. So when we talk, if we have a dog on hand to do our tracking for us, the argument stands that, that somebody's going to take that chip shot or rush a shot. It doesn't.
And almost use that as relying on it.
As a crutch. And
yeah.
We have not found that out at all. Accidents happen. There's so many variables that can happen to cause a bad shot. Buck fever is one, that ghost twig that you didn't see
yeah.
To deflect an arrow, wind change, and then the animal moving at the shot of, the release of the arrow, or just you get spooked as you pull the trigger. And obviously we get to see all facets of, where deer are hit, and that's not where the hunters were aiming,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you kind of, in the moment, I mean, I know deer I've killed, where'd you hit it? I don't really know. It's you're in the moment. It's sometimes it's fast. It's it looked good. You probably hear that all the time.
Yep.
It looked good.
Yeah.
But no, he's gone 200 yards and he's.
I know it's a dead deer. I got a good hit on it.
Yep.
I've got a lot of blood. Blood is good. Blood doesn't tell the whole story. Some of your deer that we've recovered don't have that doesn't bleed at all. It's true. It's you get a different facets of story of what happened at the shot. Where did the deer go? I actually did a seminar up in Concord, New Hampshire.
Yep.
And it was it called After the Shot, and it's a bare bones what to do right after the shot. And one of the tips, I actually learned it from my daughter. She was bear hunting, and had her on stand. She shot and went to go, meet her to track. And I said, where was the bear standing when you shot? She pulled out her phone. She took a picture of it. It blew my mind. Where was the last spot you seen it? Where did you see it up through the woods? She took a photo of it. She zoomed in. She goes, he was right beside that tree. So something as simple as, taking your cell phone and taking a photo, and if you're videotaping the hunt, then you have that to rely on. But now you have that visual of, okay, this is exactly where he was. Now we can look for sign there. And we can look for sign at the last spot that we seen that, animal. Just a great tool with that. I always revert back to hunters always, prepare for the hunt. Months ahead of time, they're tuning equipment, sharpening broadheads. Gun hunters, they're washing their clothes scent-free. But nobody really preps for the tracking, which is the most important part of the job if the animal doesn't drop right there.
Yeah.
So some of the simple equipment, toilet paper. We're going in through COVID, and through the pandemic. I wouldn't say, it was, freely available.
Right.
But nowadays, take that roll with you, and mark the hit spot. Mark where that animal is standing. And as you track the animal, mark the blood as you go. Put toilet paper down. It's something that you don't have to go back and grab. It's not like flagging, where you
Right.
should go back and pick that stuff up. And then that gives you a line sight of where the animal went. As a leashed dog tracker, I want to see my dog work. That's obviously what my passion is, working my dog. The biggest point is I want hunters to find their own deer. So I also don't want to just educate our tracking dogs, but I also want to educate the hunter itself. Because if the hunter doesn't try to locate the animal and I walk the dog in and the dog really doesn't have to work, it doesn't prove anything to me that, it was an easy track.
Right.
I'll take an easy track any day after a couple long tracks that you don't recover. Those easy tracks kind of wash out, some of the real hard ones that we've done. But I want to see the hunter succeed.
Yep.
To me, the best part of the hunt is the tracking end of it. Putting an end to the story. Once you, eye track and learn what to look for. I've been tracking for 11 years.
Wow.
Through the state of New Hampshire. And I spend a youth weekend up in Maine with a couple of trackers, Susanna Hamilton and Lindsay Ware, and I'm just a big sponge. I learned so much from those experienced trackers.
Yep.
I've had so many mentors that I've just plugged with questions and whatnot. United Blood Trackers has an event called Track Fest. They hold that every year, and it's throughout the country. One year it was down in North Carolina. 5 of us pig-piled in a Suburban and drove through the night, and it was great. It was just a good network of trackers holding different seminars of tracking. And then now to reach out to, the public, like the state of Massachusetts, to try to promote, how leashed tracking dog can be utilized, try to get legislation passed for the state of New Hampshire, for the state of Mass, rather.
What's their argument against it?
So what I've heard is there's a couple arguments. There's a state statute about not hunting with a dog, which that's not what we're doing. We're in a recovery mode with the dog, not running a deer with a dog. So, and we're on leash. So I've got a 30-foot leash with the hound, with my dog. He's a wire-hair dachshund. I'm in complete control of him 100% of the time. So he's not out running free chasing deer. So the
laws are.
From what I've heard is they're afraid to put legislation forward to allow the public to vote on this. They're going to say, oh, you're wounding deer. You need to track them with a dog. You must be wounding a lot of deer if you need a dog, to track, which is the complete opposite of what we're doing. Yes, we're recovering those deer. There's no more wounded deer than there were, 7-10 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just social media has, exploded where everybody's posting. And if you have a state that allows leash tracking, now that it's even more prevalent, hey, who has a number for a tracking dog? So now that becomes more prevalent and more noticeable because people are talking about it more. It's more out in the open, social media. So which
I guess is good and bad.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yep.
It is, yeah. And again, you have some guys that won't even, try to track their own deer. They, lack of words, or, lazy or whatnot. But in fact, that's actually the right thing to do if you're going to call a dog. So let me explain. So if you shoot a deer, and I want you to recover it, and you go through all the steps, you mark it, you follow your blood, you get to last blood, and let's say it's you and a buddy, you and your dad or whatever, and now you lost that blood. So you're going to take path of least resistance, the same, now you're looking at your trail of where the deer's already been. Now you're going to continue that straight line up, make sense of where the deer would go if it's in an area, in a bedding area or whatnot. But if you don't find any sign, or you don't find that deer, you're going to come back and you're going to go another path of least resistance somewhere else. And then you're going to start doing a couple loops. You've lost a blood trail. Now you're going to do, a loop at 30 yards, 60 yards,
Yep.
expand it. If at that point you don't see any more sign, and you get to a point where you look over that hill and it says, well, maybe the deer's over there. Maybe it's behind this bush. Well, once you start looking for a body, you're no longer tracking.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
you're just reaching out, trying to, hopefully have the deer just lay right there.
Potentially messing things up more for the dog.
It does, exactly. So at that point, if you would have called, tracking, a tracking dog in, at least make contact with the tracker and say, yes, I can be there. Sometimes we're not available. We're already on a track and we can't, promise to be there at a certain time. I don't know how long this track's going to take, that I'm already on. And I'm going to give the track that I'm on 110% effort.
Yep.
I'm just not going to cut them short because, hey, I got another tracking call.
Yeah, I got to go.
That's not how it works. That's not how it should work. So you exhaust your, yes, I've called, nobody's available. Well, now you start doing your grid search. Now you and your buddy, your dad, you may have somebody else. Now you're going to start doing your grid search, out and about. And then you get a call back from me, hey, I'm done that track, but now you've already grid searched, 150, 200 yards out. Well, wherever you step, because you were following that bloodline, you've got blood, you've got, scent on your shoes. Now, wherever you walk, my dog has to walk because he's going to follow the freshest scent. So now we have to cover that, break through that point of loss and your grid search. Now, once we get past that, typically, if the deer's dead and it's only gone, another 150, 200 yards from there, that'll take 3-5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. But I've already spent an hour and a half working through that grid search. So my dog's already wasted a lot of energy doing that. So in essence, if it, depending on the hit or whatnot, if you call right away and you make an effort, but not that grid search effort, it'll work better in the long run, by not having, all that scent contamination. The more you muck it up, the harder it is for the dog. And the odds of recovery after making a huge grid search like that dwindle. Those numbers go down because it's just that much harder. And not all dogs can work through a grid search depending on terrain and how the scent works.
Yeah. And for people that don't know, the scent the dog's following is the interdigital gland, right, in the foot.
Correct, yeah.
Because sometimes they've stopped bleeding and, you don't have any blood. But he knows that track smell, so he can stay on it if you haven't gone and stepped on the track and mushed it into the mud. It's gone.
Right. It intermingles with other deer.
Yeah.
That dog will be able to follow that one particular track.
Which is crazy.
It's amazing when you can see a dog, a dog that's well trained. I had Ted. He was very well known in the state of New Hampshire. Awesome. He was 10 years old. Lost him due to leukemia. I expected a few more years. His dad actually was 15 when he passed, so I had expected a couple more years of good tracking. He ended up passing away due to leukemia.
No, I'm sorry to hear
that. And he was able to work a track and actually do that. Put his nose in a hoof step and actually give a good sniff, and it wasn't the right one. And we've got it on video. There's several videos that we've had, in the past, and his nose would just go in a hoof, and he'd sniff, and he'd shake his head, and nope, that's not the right one. He'd go over to another hoof, and, okay, yep, this is it, and then he'd follow that one.
That's
It's just
cool.
blow your mind of what this dog could do. And my young pup here, Freddie,
Yep.
he's 4 months old, and he's on track, tongue in cheek
Yeah.
of
Tell him about
being
what he did today.
So part of United Blood Trackers here at Huntstock, I came upon an opportunity. It was just impromptu. We didn't plan on it. They had a gentleman, the Brookline Cutting Barn. They were going to do a demonstration of cutting a deer up. So they actually brought a deer out, a sicka deer, farm deer, and they were actually going to do the gutting, the field dressing, and then cutting it up. I'm like, ooh, can we get some samples? And I said, yeah, if you want the deer, samples, we can, you can have some of it. So let's bring it up a step further. So I contacted the guys from Mass Fish and Wildlife, and awesome group of guys there. And I explained, what I thought we could do if somebody would be willing to do it. It would be laying a training line, kind of like the training lines that I've been doing with Freddie. Now, he's only 4 months old. United Blood Trackers has 3 levels of test. And the first is like an entry-level test. The second is like a mediocre test. Freddie's very, very advanced for his age. He's phenomenal. Everybody likes to brag about their dog, but yeah. Freddie is exceptional. He's very good. So we agreed. They got some blood from the deer. Guy from Mass Fish and Wildlife actually laid out a line. I explained how to do it. I said, you're just going to get me to a starting point. We had a trail that we could go off of, and they just went into the woods and laid the training line. And basically it was less than 8 ounces of blood. They took a water bottle and poked a small hole in the cap, and then they just dropped drops of blood as they were walking. So it wasn't like a smear of blood the whole way. It was just drops of blood as they were walking. So sporadic drops, kind of like a deer would do. And they brought that up, and I'm not sure exactly how far it was. It was a good distance, and it was a great training for me also, because I didn't know where it went. And they ended up leaving the hoof there at the end of the track. They made a wound bed, and they put a little bit of blood and some hide in there. So we found the wound bed, which was good. And he did a couple 90-degree turns, and we went down a brook too. So it was a wet hole because of a scent pool. Yeah,
and whole typical situation.
Exactly, and the deer ended up. They brought the track up a hill, kind of cross lots, and then back down to the brook, across the brook, and then they crossed the trail that we were walking on. So it simulated the deer cutting across the trail, and Freddie picked up on that right away. It was awesome. We aged it, I guess, pretty close to 4.5 hours, and which would be a typical of like a UBT1 test, for 4-hour wait time. And just to see the reactions of everybody that was involved was just, wow, this is awesome. A 4-month-old dog that can do this, and think about what that dog can do, as he's fully trained, next year he has all this experience under his belt, he's just going to excel. He's just going to continue growing. And, what a shame not to be able to do that here in Massachusetts.
It really is. It's unfortunate. And was it was always illegal? Or it was outlawed at one point?
As far as I know, it's always been illegal. Yeah, as far as I know, there's always that perception of, the public, anti, perception of, hunting with the dog, and if they bring forward legislation and try to pass a law that they're going to open up a can of worms.
Yeah.
Now you want something else for hunting? Well, we're going to take away this. It's always a give and take. So something's going to have to give in order to get this. And I understand their fight. There's a lot of states, throughout the U.S. that had, no tracking, no leash tracking.
Yeah.
And United Blood Track is a great resource. There's a lot of other states, gentlemen, people that have worked to change that legislation in the states. So hopefully we can get that information to the right person, somebody that's, connected in the legislator, to actually put forward a bill and, get petitions and whatnot and get a backing for having this. And there's a huge calling for it. Throughout the season, I'll get, half a dozen, 7 or 8 calls, to track and mass.
You're just like, I can't.
Yeah, it's illegal. And kind of in a facet of why I'm actually how I'm here is Patrick Guyette. Actually, he did a post on social media about a deer hunt, and this was last year, and he was talking about how the deer went and what he had for sign and what happened with the deer, and he was kind of down in the dumps because he had tracked it all day, and then he bumped it and kind of lost blood. And so I reached out to him, and I didn't know him from the hole in the wall. I hadn't known anything about Hunt Suburbia or his podcast or whatnot. And I just kind of reached out of, hey, I'm a licensed tracker. Let's go over your hit. Maybe I can help you over the phone. And we did. We talked about it, and I raised his spirits up. and I felt very confident he was going to recover that deer the next day, and he did.
Yeah.
And you know, that was one of the first phone calls I got. You know, it was when he recovered it, and it was all high fives over the phone, and
Yeah.
it was just, you know, joyous. Of, you know, it's just too bad that we couldn't do this, because I would have brought my dog in that night, you know, and recovered it that night. I felt that confident he was going to recover it, and everything just fell into place. And I've done that a couple times, you know, talking to gentlemen over the phone, just giving them advice of, you know, okay, let me talk about your hit. You know, how did the deer react? You know, what did you shoot it with? You know, just a series of questions that, you know, you can kind of narrow down the probability of a recovery just by a few questions of, okay, how did this deer react and whatnot? You know, and when I'll do a phone interview, you know, to get a base of, okay, is it a viable track? You know, how is this gonna work out? You know, and confidence levels of, you know, I honestly can't tell you, and you know, I don't screen calls. You know, I just want to get a base of, okay, what am I getting into? You know, what are my expectations? And I've had the complete opposite of having an expectation of this should be a slam dunk, and it's the totally opposite. Is a complete, you know,
Yep.
a real bad show. And I've had the, you know, I don't even think I hit the deer, and, you know, I don't feel confident about it. And we get there, and they couldn't make any advancement in the track, and we get there, and the deer's 150 yards piled up. You know, and it's like a track that, in my mind, it wasn't going to be recoverable deer, and so it's, you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
You know,
Just people not really knowing where they hit.
and not that they're not that hunters are ignorant, they just don't have the experience.
Yep.
You know, the more you do, the more you're going to learn, and you can pick up, you know, to read sign. So just in a phone interview, I can get a good image. You know, if it's truthful, you know, information. You know, and that's a key point, is being truthful, because some guys will tell you what you want to hear to get you out there, you know, thinking that if I tell them the wrong thing, they're just going to say, no, it's not a dead deer, you know, and I've had that before, and I'm like, tell me straight up, you know, is this, what are you thinking, you know?
So what are you looking for? Like, what would your question process be? Someone's like, I shy. I think it's high. You know, doesn't really know. Like,
Yeah. So some of the first questions I would ask is, what were you using for a weapon? Is it archery, or are we talking a muzzleloader, shotgun, rifle? Because those all bring in different effects of how the deer's going to react and what you're going to find in sign. So if it's archery right off the bat, I'm going to ask, did you recover the arrow? If we can recover the arrow tells the whole story of where that went through the deer. Most of the time you can tell if that has, you know, a gut smell to it.
mm-hmm.
If it's just a bright red blood, you know, with just some bubbles on it, you know, it's going to tell me, okay, is this muscle blood with bubbles, or is it pink and frothy and that's lung blood? You know, typically if it's, you know, if you get a lung shot or a heart shot like that, you're not calling me. You know, those are the deer that are, you know,
Yeah.
either they drop within sight or whatnot. Or
The blood trail is so apparent that you find it.
Yeah, you could see it for a mile. So typically we won't get calls on that, although we have people that are colorblind, and they can't follow that track.
Yeah.
So that's where we come into play too, you know, in that aspect. But you know, again, okay, what was the weapon? You know, were you on the ground? You know, were you up in a tree stand? How high is the tree stand? How far was the deer from you when you were in the tree stand? So if you're really high up, you know, let's say 30 feet or plus, and that deer is, you know, closer than 10, 15 yards, that's a low probability. That's a hard shot, because you're not going to catch anything vital shooting straight down. You know, it's a marginal window.
Yeah.
You know, we always talk about, you know, aiming for the vitals, you know, right behind that shoulder, you know, right in the rib cage, the boiler room, you know, per se. You know, anything that you can stick that arrow through, or that gun, you know, heart, lung, you know, that's your high probability. I don't even want to get into the head shot, neck shot.
Oh, geez.
And that's a huge argument. And boy, that's a whole other podcast in itself. I don't agree with it. And you'll have guys that I've killed every deer with a neck shot, and it works every time until it doesn't work. And then when it doesn't work, you're not going to recover that deer. There's nothing in that neck that's going to kill that deer.
No.
So your probability is going to, if you don't kill it, you could do, you know, a couple things. One, you're not going to recover it, and two, you could cause that deer to suffer a long painful death.
Yeah, get infected and.
Yep, shoot the jaw off. You know, now the thing dies of starvation. So your high probability, you know, kills or shots, you know, your heart, lung, you know, broadside. quartering. Which way is it quartering? Is it quartering to, quartering away? A lot of different questions of whatnot. How did the deer react? If you had somebody that, I hit the deer, but I don't know where I hit it. Well, how did the deer react? Well, when I shot, he hunched right up, and then he just kind of walked away. Well, that's indicative of a gut shot, further back gut shot. Those you're going to handle a lot different. That track you're going to handle, and even just as a hunter without a hound or dog, you're going to handle that track 100% different than you would with a heart-lung shot or a muscle shot. So that's going to determine whether we're going to track right now, or we're going to let it sit 8-10 hours, or we're going to come back tomorrow morning. And you got to look at, your other factors, predators in the area. So if you leave a deer in the woods overnight, what's the probability of that deer, being there when you get there in the morning, that a coyote or, fox or a bear didn't already get to it?
Right.
So you got to look at that aspect of it. It is a series of, things that you have to decipher as as a tracker. So we hit that deer, and if you left that gut shot deer, the probability of that deer going less than 100 yards and bedding down is probably pretty good. If you can sneak out of there and don't bump it, walk out the opposite way that deer went, 9 times out of 10, high probability that deer is not going to go that far. He's going to bed right down. And surprisingly, he didn't bed down right in sight. Typically they won't go that far. They're uncomfortable and they want to bed down right away. And typically they want to get to water. Not all the time. Not all gut shots deer go to water, but for a majority, it's a good place to look if you don't have access to a tracking dog.
Yep.
But you're going to handle that shot way different than if the deer mule kicked and you have different sign, there. So get back to the predator and waiting. So let's say we take that gut shot deer, and we're not privy to the info of, okay, we need to let it set for 8-10 hours, and you and your buddy go out and you track it, and then now you bump it. And you bump it out of that bed at 60 yards. And the deer goes another 100, 150 yards and then beds down again. So now you continue the track. Boom, now you bump the deer again. So now the deer goes another 150 yards. So you've got a 300 or 400, close to 500 yard, wound channel, if you will. So you bump it that second time, and now you say, geez, maybe we ought to back out and give it the night. So instead of having a 60-yard wound channel, and I call wound channel from where the deer was hit to where it's laying, so any predator has to come across that line, if you will. Mm-hmm. If you bump that deer, several times,
yep,
it just increases the odds of a predator coming across that line. Once they hit that line, they're like, ooh, free food, and then they go over to your animal.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So now you just upped your chances of predator, getting up, a lot higher.
Or depending on where you are, you up your chances of bumping it on the posted property, and they go, no, you can't go recover the deer, and
exactly,
there's nothing you can do.
Whereas if you just sat tight and you give it the proper time, that deer isn't going to be that far. Yeah.
Is the rule of thumb kind of like, well, do you hunt?
I do, yeah, as much as I can. Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine you're pretty busy during season. But
yeah.
So if you shoot, say you bow hunt.
Yep.
So you shoot a deer with a bow, and you don't see it fall.
Yep.
And you're, I'm not sure about my shot. Are you obviously right out and give it the time, or?
I'm probably the worst critic. It's like a mechanic having a car that's always broken, and a plumber that's got leaky pipes.
Yeah. You're like, I'm going to get my dog.
Yeah. Well, I'm probably one of the worst ones of, you should wait that hour before you even go look at the arrow. My biggest thing I'll probably do is just go look at the arrow.
Yeah.
Just curiosity is going to get the best of me. So typically at that point, I'll see that arrow, and that'll tell me the tale of what I hit and whatnot. And I've done that before, and I have backed out. I ended up shooting a deer last year in Massachusetts. I had the opportunity to hunt, and I was off just a little bit. It was a muzzleloader. I see the deer hunch up, and I did exactly what we talked about.
Yep.
And it killed me because I had to sit there, on the side of the field, waiting for a coyote not to come across. I shot him on the field edge. So I basically camped out on the field edge for almost 7-8 hours, just waiting for this deer to expire. It was terrible. Whereas in New Hampshire, I could have, with my tracking license, I could have went and dispatched it. So that aspect really bothered me, not being able to do what I could do if it was, 20 miles further north. If I was 20 miles north, I could have dispatched it. I had my tracking license, I had my dog, I could have dispatched it. So the drive to get it passed here in Massachusetts is just a strong drive for me also, not just as a hunter, being able to utilize this resource, but as a tracker, because I'd love to be able to come and track in Mass.
Yeah, like you said, you get a bunch of calls and you're just like, dude, I can't do anything.
I can't do it. No, the most I can do is give you advice over the phone, and that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's hopefully, and that was my gist of coming down here to Huntstock.
Well, it sounds like you at least, and I know it's hard for Mass Wildlife to convince the legislature, but at least you opened some eyes, I think.
I did, yeah. The exposure
and they're
down
like
here.
4 months old, really?
Yeah, right. Imagine when he's fully trained, how he's going to be. It's and the crowd here was absolutely phenomenal. I can't say enough about Huntstock, how it turned out, and how
shout out to
how
Pat.
going.
He's for the first year. I mean, he knocked it out of the park.
Phenomenal job, yeah. In the best weather you could ever imagine. Just breaking free from a heat wave.
Yeah.
Beautiful weather.
All
beautiful
the stars
grounds.
aligned. Yeah.
The farm here is absolutely gorgeous. Everybody here involved is super friendly, and this is what a hunting expo, or hunting Huntstock should be.
Yeah.
Everywhere you look, I mean, even right now you look and there's a group of guys talking over here and a group of guys talking over here. It's not like your typical expo where you're walking down a hall, you're walking down a lane and they're trying to sell, solar panels, and here's a hot tub over here.
Yeah.
Everybody here is involved in hunting, and we're, like you and I, we're chatting about, tracking and hunting. It's our passion, and we're both enjoying, the company of being able to talk about this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing to talk about, and a lot of people don't know it's available or who to call or how to,
Right.
So what's the easiest way for someone? I mean, it's got to be regional, right? You got different trackers in different regions, but
yeah. So each state typically has their own tracking list. Through their departments of fish and wildlife. So I'm listed in the state of New Hampshire. I'm the Fish and Game website, listed as a licensed tracker. I'm also listed under United Blood Trackers. So if you pull up unitedbloodtrackers.org, pulls up the state of the U.S., and you just click on whatever state you're in. So hopefully in another year or two, I might be able to hunt out west. I'm trying to get some connections, and I'll be out in Illinois. And all I need to do is click on, Illinois, and it's going to bring up a list of licensed trackers, members of United Blood Trackers that, those are a resource that I could use, Most states have Facebook pages for their tracking groups also. We have a tracking group, New Hampshire Blood Trackers, Wildlife Recovery Facebook page. And that's prominent, and we get a lot of, training stuff out, not just listing the list of, trackers in New Hampshire, but also different stories of, tracking, events that we put on and whatnot.
Yep.
Seminars. We're normally putting on, a seminar a year, a couple podcasts here and there, trying to get the word out of what we do in New Hampshire. And actually, there's a group of us, New Hampshire trackers. We actually did some mock trial forensic for New Hampshire Fish and Game. They had some new recruits coming in. I think there was probably 7 or 8 of them. And one of the officers reached out to us and said, "Hey, would you be willing to do a seminar on leashed tracking dogs and the forensics of looking at hit sites and what we're seeing and what we're doing?" And we actually ended up getting a roadkill deer, and we strung it up. It sounds morbid, but we ended up putting shots on the animal, and we had the black plastic laid up behind it. And so at each particular shots, we could see the sign and how far the sign traveled, up, down, and what the sign was at each particular shot. So we would shoot, do the forensics on it, take the plastic off, put a new sheet down, or peel that sheet off. So each shot had, new plastic, so you could see what different sign you were looking at. And that was huge. That just opened up so many different eyes of, where you hit and what it's going to leave for sign. Leg hits where you get chunks of leg bone. And how many times have you heard, "Oh, I got him in the ribs, that's rib bone." and
Yeah.
it's not a chunk of rib bone. It may look like a rib bone, but that's most likely lower leg.
Yeah.
Those,
It
those
came
bone,
out, hit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're gonna have bone fragments and whatnot. So just being able to pick up on, that sign and see what, and be able to explain it is huge. Yeah. So we're able to do a couple seminars like that and just promote, leash dog tracking in itself, not necessarily, promoting, each tracker themselves. That's
Yeah.
I'm not here promoting my leash dog tracking in New Hampshire. My gist is, let's try to get it passed in Massachusetts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah, I appreciate what you're doing. It's big, and you're very passionate about it, and
yeah.
I really appreciate what you're trying to do because, yeah, like you said, it's just unfortunate.
Yep. Yeah. Enough
A
people
couple
have to get
select,
together.
couple select rules keep it,
Yeah. Yeah. And I get the fight, and it's going to be a long fight, and it's going to be a tough fight. I get it. But you get, Pennsylvania and New Jersey to pass it. That says a lot too.
Yeah.
They've got leash dog tracking passed in New Jersey. So
Yeah, so it's got to be possible in Mass.
everything's possible. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Mike, I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And anybody out there who, how much of southern New Hampshire do you cover? You'll go
I'll cover the whole state pretty much.
Okay.
I live in central New Hampshire.
Central, okay.
Yeah, so I'm literally an hour to the seacoast, an hour to Keene.
Yep.
Lakes region, I'm just about an hour. Most north of Lakes region is kind of a little too far, but I have traveled 2.5 hours up north, for a track, depending on what the track was, and obviously the travel time of I'm going to put 2 hours of traveling time and not have that high probability of a call is just not in the cards.
Yeah.
So, and we can't charge for what we're doing. It's all done on donation base, and most of the time it's it all works out in the wash. And I'm not doing it to make money. This is my hobby and my passion. And what hobby and passion doesn't cost you money.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
I
I ride dirt bikes. I hear you.
yeah. So I've got a dog that's is a member of the family. And I love working my dog. He sleeps in bed with us at night.
Yeah.
He's a true family member. He's a cuddle bug, and the more I can work with him, that's all the work that I put into him. I want to show what he can do.
Yep.
So it just makes me, drives me to be better, every track I go on. So
Yeah.
today was phenomenal. It just boosted my confidence that
Yeah.
much more. Yeah. So good.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate your time.
All right, my friend.
And hopefully I don't have to call you, but
Yeah, I'm listed
Well-
New Hampshire Blood Trackers and United Blood Trackers too. You
Yep.
can find me there.
all right. Thanks, dude.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Make sure and come back and join us every other Monday with a brand new episode. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure and leave a review. And you can find me on YouTube at Northeast Hunt and Film. Once again, thanks for listening. Hey, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. Make sure and come back and join us every other Monday with a brand new episode. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure and leave a review. And you can find me on YouTube at Northeast Hunt and Film. Once again, thanks for listening.